The wind carried dust like a living thing that evening, rattling through the half-dead cottonwoods, whispering against the warped boards of the old town. The streets were half empty, lanterns burning weak in the dusk. Jonas Kane sat tall in his saddle, reins slack in one hand, his other resting on the butt of the revolver at his hip. His eyes, flint gray beneath the brim of his sweat-darkened hat, moved over the crooked storefronts, the shuttered saloon windows, the stray dog loping through shadows. He'd been riding since sunup, chasing the ghost of work or maybe just distance, and now all he wanted was coffee hot enough to burn the dust from his throat. He was swinging down from his horse when he saw her. A little girl, barefoot, no more than 6 or 7, darted into the street as though running from the dark itself. Her calico dress was torn, her knees scraped raw. She stood straight before him, chin lifted with a courage that was trembling at the edges. Her voice, when it came, cracked in the dry air. "Can you marry my mama so we can sleep inside?" The street seemed to hush. Even the dog stopped. Jonas stilled, boots planted in the dust, his hat brim shadowing the confusion in his eyes. Behind the girl, standing in the faint glow spilling from the livery, was a woman, thin, shawl clutched about her shoulders, face pale as ash, eyes wide and wary as if braced for a blow that hadn't come yet. Jonas took off his hat. He wasn't sure why, respect, maybe, or instinct, some old teaching burned deep. He crouched so his eyes were level with the child's. The dust bit his throat when he spoke. "What's your name, little one?" She blinked fast, tears balancing on her lashes. "Clara." "And your mama?" The woman shifted in the shadows but said nothing. Jonas saw bruises blooming dark beneath the edge of her shawl, saw her hand tremble as she held it tighter across her chest. It was then he heard it, the sound of boots coming down the boardwalk. Heavy, purposeful. Men's voices, coarse with drink. And suddenly the shape of the thing sharpened. This wasn't chance. The girl had thrown herself before him because danger was already walking up behind. Jonas rose slow, slipping the hat back on. His horse stamped once, nervous. 3 men came out of the dim-lit saloon, laughter dying when they spotted Jonas. Their eyes slid past him to the woman and the child, and one spat, a dark arc hitting the dust. "Thought you were told to get gone," the biggest said. His voice was thick, slurred, but the meanness in it was sober enough. "You don't belong here, neither of you." The girl pressed into Jonas's leg. He felt her tiny fists clutch the worn denim of his trousers. Jonas didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was heavier than iron, and it made the men shift, uncertain. The woman's lips parted, but no sound came. Jonas glanced back once, caught her eyes, pleading, shamed, yet unbroken. Then he stepped forward, between them and the men. "You're done here," Jonas said, voice low as gravel. The biggest man sneered, swaggering closer. "You some kind of savior?" Jonas's hand hovered near his Colt. "No. Just a man who's tired of watching cowards pick bones clean." The standoff thickened, dusk folding into night. For a breath, it seemed certain there'd be blood in the dust. But then a voice called from across the street, an old stable hand, half drunk, warning about the marshal making rounds. The men spat curses, but they peeled away, muttering promises that left the air colder than before. Jonas didn't move until their shadows were gone. Then he turned, crouching again so his gaze met Clara's. "You and your mama got someplace to go?" Her head shook hard. The woman's whisper came ragged, almost broken. "No." Jonas exhaled, slow, as though steadying himself against a choice. He touched the brim of his hat toward her. "Then come." They walked the mile out of town in silence, moonlight brushing the hardpan road silver. Jonas led the horse. The girl clung to his free hand, her mother trailing, shawl pulled tight against the desert chill. At his cabin, timber squared rough against the prairie, lantern light glowing faint in the window, Jonas pushed the door wide. Inside was plain, a stove cold, a table scarred, a bed narrow, and another made from rope strung with a straw tick. It was no palace, but it was safe. Clara darted to the hearth, curling near it though no fire yet burned. The woman lingered in the doorway, caught between gratitude and shame. Jonas set down his hat, struck flint, coaxed flame into kindling until the room breathed warmth again. "You'll stay here tonight," he said, voice firm as a verdict. Her eyes lifted, startled by his certainty. We can't impose." "You can," Jonas said simply. And then, because he saw her trembling, he softened, "Ain't no one gonna hurt you here." The quiet stretched, filled with the crackle of flame, the wind against the eaves. Clara drifted into sleep before the fire, lashes casting shadows on her small cheeks. Jonas fetched a quilt, rough but clean, and laid it over her. His fingers lingered a moment on the fabric before he stepped back, eyes catching the mother's. She whispered her name then, almost as if giving it cost her strength. Evelyn. Jonas nodded once, storing it like something sacred. The days that followed stitched themselves into a fragile rhythm. Jonas rose at dawn, chopping wood, mending fence, tending the horse. Evelyn moved quiet in his cabin, sweeping, mending his shirts, cooking what little they had. She carried herself like someone used to vanishing, to folding into corners. But in the lamplight, Jonas saw her shoulders easing, saw color seep back into her cheeks. Clara laughed, chasing the barn cat, braiding wildflowers into Jonas's horse's mane. Sometimes she trailed after Jonas, peppering him with questions he answered in his low, steady way. Sometimes she climbed onto his knee by the fire, curling against him as if he'd always been the shelter she sought. It was in these quiet gestures that something deeper began to root. Evelyn watched Jonas carry her sleeping child from floor to bed, his movements tender for a man who lived so rough. She saw the way he averted his gaze when she adjusted her shawl, how he turned away to give her dignity. Trust, fragile as glass, began to grow. But shadows don't vanish easy. One evening, as Jonas was oiling his rifle, a knock rattled the cabin door. A neighbor, Mr. Hale, a weathered rancher, stood with dust on his boots and warning in his eyes. "Those men from town," Hale said. "They've been asking around. Say the woman owes them. Say they'll be back sooner than later." Jonas felt Evelyn go still behind him. Her hand flew to her shawl, clutching it like armor. "Dad?" Jonas asked, voice flat. Hale spat into the dirt. "Not coin. Cruelty. They think they own what they break." His eyes softened as he glanced at Evelyn. "Be ready, Kane." The door shut. The cabin seemed smaller with the weight of what was coming. Jonas stood long in silence, then began moving, checking rifles, stacking wood, filling the water pail. Evelyn watched, fear and guilt warring in her eyes. At last she whispered, "I should leave. I brought this on you." Jonas's gaze cut sharp to hers. "You think they won't follow? You think running makes a wolf less hungry?" His voice softened like earth after storm. "You're here now. That's enough." The storm came 3 nights later. Wind howled through the cottonwoods, rain lashing sideways. The cabin groaned, lanterns flickering. Jonas stood by the door, rifle ready, every sense sharpened. Evelyn sat with Clara in her arms, rocking slow, whispering lullabies that trembled at the edges. Then hoofbeats, muffled curses in the rain. Shadows moving toward the cabin. Jonas set his jaw, stepped outside. The storm swallowed him whole, rain cutting like knives, mud sucking at his boots. 3 riders reined in, guns glinting in lantern glow. "Well, Kane," the biggest sneered, water streaming off his hat. "Ain't your fight. Hand the woman over." Jonas's rifle lifted, steady despite the storm. "You'll ride away. Now." Laughter cut through the rain. "Or what? You'll kill us all for a whore?" Jonas's breath steamed, eyes hard as steel. "For her child's sleep. For her right to draw breath without fear. For decency in a world near bled dry of it. That enough for you?" The standoff burned, lightning tearing the sky. Then a shot split the night, wild, desperate. Jonas dropped to one knee, returned fire sharp and sure. Chaos erupted, gunfire, thunder, the scream of horses rearing. Evelyn, inside, clutched Clara close, whispering prayers. She heard the roar of rain, the crack of rifles, her heart breaking with every sound. And then, silence except the storm. The door banged open. Jonas stumbled in, soaked, hat gone, blood striping his sleeve but eyes alive. Behind him the hoofbeats faded, retreating, broken. Evelyn rose, shawl falling, tears flooding. For the first time she reached for him, hands pressing to his wound, voice breaking. "You fool." Jonas caught her wrist, gentle. "Alive ain't I?" Clara slipped from her mother's arms, ran to Jonas, hugging his leg tight. "Does this mean we can stay?" Jonas crouched, wincing at the pain, met her wide eyes. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he took off his hat again, setting it gently on her head. "Reckon it does," he said. Evelyn's tears spilled silent, mingling with rain dripping from Jonas's hair. And in that small, firelit cabin, with the storm raging outside, something shifted, fragile, profound, unspoken. Not salvation. Not fairy tale. But a beginning. Out on the frontier, life was measured in storms weathered and kindness given when the world expected none. That night, a little girl's desperate plea carved a place of shelter from dust and cruelty. A cowboy, hardened by solitude, learned that some fights are worth bleeding for, not out of duty but out of love yet unnamed. Now, click on the video on your screen to hear a story even more stirring than this one. You'll feel it deep in your heart. Go on, friend. I'll be waiting by the fire for you.